enjoy this part of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ probably more than any other part, because there's a certain degree of simplicity regarding it. Talking about his, his family, talking about his upbringing, ﷺ, his early years, talking about a lot about the circumstances that surrounded him, ﷺ, in the place that he lived and the people who he grew up with, ﷺ. I find that to be very interesting and fascinating and important, because that's how you know someone. You get to know someone, or you figure someone out by seeing where and whom they grew up with, where they grew up, who they grew up with, and what they did as younger individuals. And that helps us understand how they became the people they later on became. So when we speak about the Prophet ﷺ, I think it's important that we actually go through take the time to go through his childhood and talk about his early years and the people that influenced him heavily ﷺ during those early years. So last time I ended the halaqah and we arrived. He was 6 years old ﷺ. His mother Amina bint Wahab had just passed away. He had participated in burying her ﷺ at a very young age. He witnessed that, and I took a few moments to talk about why. Why would that happen to him ﷺ? Why would he go through so many difficulties at such a young age? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves him the most out of all his creations, right? If that's something that we agree, or at least he's up there with the top 5 ﷺ, people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love the most, well, the question is, why would all this happen to him? Why would he be orphaned before he was even born, never knowing his father? And why would he lose his mother when he needed her the most, when he's only 6 years old? And why would he have to witness that? ﷺ had to go through this as a child. And you would think that maybe going through that as a child would make him someone who would struggle with empathy or struggle with compassion, but it's not. It's quite the opposite. When you go through his life, ﷺ, you find that to be you find the opposite completely. He was the most compassionate and the most merciful creation ever, not human being. Even though he went through all these difficulties, sometimes difficulties, extreme difficulties can kill the heart of a person and make people difficult and make them lack empathy and lack compassion and hate society. But ﷺ did not do that. What it really did for him is it taught him early on the reality of life, how short life really is, how simple life really is, and how it all can end very quickly. So he was someone who didn't hold on to dunya, ﷺ. And you'll see that later on this year when he stands, and the bounty that they were able to take after Hunayn was so immense that he himself, just what he was given, just his portion of it, was enough livestock to fill the gap between 2 small hills or 2 small mountains. Meaning you're talking maybe about 300, 400 head of sheep or cattle. And he stands there, that's his, and a man comes and he looks at it, and this man is from a poor background, and he stares at this sheep. He stares at this livestock, and it's as if he likes it. So the Prophet ﷺ asks him, "Ayu'jibuk? Do you like it?" قال نعم, of course, look at it. It's look how much it is. It's a lot of wealth that time. At that time, that's enough wealth to take care of yourself and your family and a couple of generations to come. You're taken care of unless a famine happens or they all die from a disease. You're good. You have enough money. فقالت أتعجبك؟ قال نعم. قال then هي لك, then it's yours. فقال أتهزأ بي? What, you're gonna mock me because I'm poor? Because I have nothing and I know no one's here for me. You're gonna make fun of me? What do you mean all this for you? فقال أتعجبك? I asked you, did you like it? قال نعم تعجبني, of course I like it. قال هي لك, it's yours. فأخذها الرجل وانصرف. So the man took it. And he started to walk. يرفض أن يلتفت. He's refusing to look back. خشية أن يعود الرسول في كلامه. He's scared that maybe if he looks back, the Prophet ﷺ calls upon him and says, "No, I was just joking." Of course, he would never do that. عليه الصلاة والسلام. يمشي يقول محمد يعطي عطاء من لا يخشى الفقر. Muhammad seems to give as if he has no fear of poverty, as if he doesn't fear being poor. And let's be honest, that's what we all fear. We all fear being poor. That's why we work so hard and we make sure that we take care of our family, because we fear that. We don't want to leave our families poor. We don't want to be poor. We don't want to sit around not having enough food to put on the table, not to have enough clothing to cover our bodies, not to have a home or a house. It's a fear that we have inside of us. It's a normal part of our evolution and of our human nature. Alayhi salatu wasalam would give as if he didn't have that fear. As if he didn't. Even though he did, just like us. That's the point. Just like any other human being, he feared that too. It's a normal part of being a person. But alayhi salatu wasalam would behave differently. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. So after his mother passed away, he was moved on to a very special caregiver. Someone very special was going to take care of him for the next 2.5 years, from age 6 to age 8. He was going to spend time with his grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib ibn Hashim ibn Abd Manaf. Abd al-Muttalib, as I told you I think a couple of halaqat ago, was an extraordinary man. He was a great human being. He is someone who made true change in the place that he lived. He actually brought change to Arabia. He revived the law of Ibrahim alayhi salam to a certain extent within Mecca. He revived Zamzam and made sure that Zamzam was public. People weren't going to use it for personal interest. Abd al-Muttalib was someone that the Arabs respected. He stood in front of Abraha and he spoke to him. And he showed a level of integrity that the people of Arabia couldn't show at that time because of the enormity of Abraha's army. So Abd al-Muttalib was a international figure basically in the region. People respected him. People would come from far to speak to him. They would take appointments in order to meet with Abd al-Muttalib. And he was very famous. His aba'a, he would take, the older Middle Eastern people sometimes wear on top of their galabiya like a abaya. They just take it off and it's usually just there for show. It used to really help out when it was cold. I'm not sure it helps out anymore. But I have one at home, my dad does. It's just it's a part of culture now. But Abd al-Muttalib would always wear one. It always showed a certain status. So what he would do is he would take it off and he would lay it out in front of the Kaaba. And he would sit there and people would come to speak with him. No one was allowed to sit with him on the aba'a, except the leaders of the land who would come to speak to him. Except the Prophet ﷺ, he was always left to sit there. Abd al-Muttalib would take the Prophet ﷺ with him everywhere. And whenever he sat down and he met with these great leaders of the land, these political figures, these social figures, people who had high status, people who were very wealthy, people who had influence, the Prophet ﷺ was always around. Now remember, he's only 6 or 7, he's possibly 8 years old. Now the interesting part is that at that age, ﷺ would sit down and he would listen. And they would be talking about stuff that are extremely boring. I'll put it that way. Very boring topics that they're talking about for a 7-year-old, at least to say, for a 7 or 6-year-old. Talking about politics, talking about influence, talking about wealth, talking about all this stuff. And the Prophet ﷺ is sitting there and he's fully attentive. Now al-Muttalib would point at the Prophet ﷺ secretly to the person he's speaking to. He would say, see, انظر, إن لابني هذا لشأنا. My son here, this is his grandson of course, my son here one day will amount to a great deal. See, look, he's 6 years old and he's not running around and he's pulling his hair and causing chaos and making it difficult for Abd al-Muttalib to have his conversations. He's actually sitting there listening. Alayhi salatu wasalam learned within those 2.5 years that he spent with Abd al-Muttalib, probably more than he learned at any time in his life. And that's how things used to happen, by the way. It used to be like that. You used to have children and you used to teach them that which you were taught by your father. That's how things used to work. And we have families in the Middle East that go by a name that is an actual occupation. So we have al-Najjar, al-Haddad, and al-Kharraz, and al-Bazzar. And all these are names of great scholars, by the way, you'll find as well. And these are all occupations. Either a carpenter or a blacksmith or someone who sells certain types of food or a certain type of merchandise. And this was something that the father would pass down to his son and then pass down to the grandson and keep on being passed down. This is the family business. And it wasn't just family businesses that were being passed down. It was also the moral code. It was the ethical compass. Values were being passed down. Certain behaviors and practices were being passed down. This was an important part of your upbringing. I don't know at what time exactly we gave that up, but it got given up. At some point it was given up. And we stopped doing it. And we sent our kids to these things that we call schools. And somehow we believe that these values and ethics and morals and practices and principles are going to be passed down to them through school, through a system that was originally made to make sure that we can get people to work in factories and go to the history of it. It's not that great. Not to say anything about school. I went to school. Everyone should go to school. Go to school. Don't walk out of here and tell your parents you don't want to go to school. Then I get in trouble. Please make sure you go to school next week. But the concept I'm trying to talk about is that there's more to life than just whatever you learn in school. There's something else that's supposed to be passed down by your family member, by your father. You should learn it. Now, if you don't know it, that's a problem. You need to go learn so you can come and pass this down, because this is only learned. It's only learned through personal touch, through someone being so suhba. It's called suhba. In Arabic, it's called suhba. We're supposed to, when they talk about it in terms of learning knowledge, it's called mulazama. We had to do mulazama when we were learning Islam. We had to do this. I had to go and spend time with the shaykh, live with him. Meaning I had to find a shaykh who had a lifestyle that would allow me to actually exist within his vicinity. He had an extra room or something, or he was old, didn't have a job. He just taught Islam, or he retired. In order for me to actually spend time with people so I could learn. And if that didn't happen, then you were known that you didn't actually complete whatever knowledge you were seeking. If you didn't do suhba and mulazama. That's why the Sahaba are called Sahaba. They're not called Hawariyin or Atba' or whatever you also want to call them, because there's all these other names that exist in the Quran that you could have used to call these people, but they were called Sahaba. Why? Because they have suhba. Because they got to be companions, they got to spend time closely with the Prophet ﷺ and learn whatever it is that they were missing, if they were missing anything. ﷺ got to spend time with Abdul Muttalib. And I told you, Abdul Muttalib, probably the greatest character of the land at the time. ﷺ got to sit with him, listen to him, learn from him, observe him, and he took from him, he took a lot. There's a lot of experience that the Prophet ﷺ picked up from these, from the years he spent with Abdul Muttalib, just listening and learning. I have another point to make. I make this every time. Well, I'll make it again, it's okay. How many people here under the age of 35 watch the news? If you're under 35 and you watch the news, put your hand up. All right, good. All of them are close to my age group, so all of them are very close to 30. If I go down a little bit, the number of hands will go down. If I go down to maybe 17, 16, the hands will completely disappear. Maybe have 2 or 3 people put their hands up who actually watch the news. Now, is the point of this is that I want people to watch the news? No. What I'm trying to say is, if you don't have serious interests at a young age, when your mind is at its strongest, your mind is strong, you're capable of understanding and memorizing and learning and absorbing, and if during that age you have no serious interests at all, you don't learn anything that is of worth, then when you come to my age, and you're expected to have opinions on certain issues, on international, national, global, political, religious, social issues, you have to have these opinions. Where do you get your opinions from? Where are you going to get your opinions from if you spent the first 30 years of your life not interested in anything that means that has value or has worth? Believe me, you're going to get your opinion from the people who did. Meaning, you get your opinion from whoever, when they were young, had serious interests, and they read a lot, and they listened a lot, and they watched the news, and they cared about what was happening around them. So they formed their opinions based on all that experience and knowledge and wisdom they picked up. And now, when you're older and you don't have any knowledge and you don't have experience to form your opinion, you'll take that person's opinion. Meaning, your opinion is not even your own. You don't even own your own opinion. And I can't imagine a worse way of living your life where what you believe is not really from you. You don't know enough, so you have to ask someone else to tell you, so what is the right thing here? Okay, that's what you'll hold on to it, but you're not really sure. It's not something that you formed. You didn't spend enough time because too much time was wasted. Too many years of your life as a young person were wasted staring at a screen that had some man jumping up and down and kicking a ball or shooting a whatever. You wasted too much time doing that, and there's no skills to be gained from that, and there's no knowledge to be gained from that either. You think it's not important, but I'm telling you now, the strongest person in the next, if you're in your teens right now, the strongest teen in the next 15 years, now when you're around in your late 20s, early 30s, is the one who has the most knowledge. It has nothing to do with how much muscle mass you have. Make sure you have muscle mass. Don't be like me. Make sure you go to the gym and take care of your physique. But the strongest person will be the one who's the most knowledgeable, who knows the most, who's well read, who's very well educated, understands how the world works, who has his own opinions. You don't have to all be right, but they have to exist and they have to be yours. It has to be something based on your personal observations, so later when you observe something different, you can tweak them and change them. You see, people who didn't base their opinions on their own experience and knowledge will never change their opinions, because they don't know what their opinions are based on to begin with. So these opinions become dead opinions. They're stuck there. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? A lot of opinions in the world, whether it's Islamic or political, that are set in stone, that never budge and never evolve and never get better, never change. That the reason is because whoever held that opinion didn't base it on their own experience and knowledge. They took it from someone else. And they didn't take all the experience and knowledge that came with it, so now they just have an opinion. They don't know how to tweak it because they didn't form it to begin with. But if you form your own opinion, you have the ability as you move on in life to tweak it and change it. I understand what I'm trying to say. This is very important. You need to know what you need to know. You cannot know something and just know just enough of it to get by, because life will expose you. Because a situation will come where you have to be able to be flexible with that opinion, and you can't because you never formed it, so you don't know what's okay and what's not okay. That's why we struggle as Muslims sometimes from a fiqh perspective. From a fiqh perspective, we struggle because sometimes the ruling that was haram at one point, as time evolved and as evidence changed and as circumstances changed, that opinion should have changed a bit as well. But the person who's carrying it didn't form it. He was taught it. Doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the knowledge, doesn't know how to tweak it. So he sticks to it, and it causes agony for everybody. And everyone suffers. Until someone comes along who has enough knowledge, enough experience, who understands how to do that. To tweak opinions. And I'm giving an example within my domain, which is Islamic law, for example, or jurisprudence. But that same example, it applies everywhere. Specialists in their field have the ability to tweak opinions. That's why there's nothing set in stone. They know. They understand why it is that this is the treatment for this disease. They know why it is that this is how we deal with this political or social problem. They know why. So they know when things change, my opinion and stances change a bit. But if you don't know that, you're stuck. You're stuck. And a lot of the hatred and a lot of the bigotry and a lot of the closed-mindedness just comes from that. It comes from people who didn't spend enough time during their early years educating themselves so they could have their own opinions. They had to depend on other people's opinions. And that made their opinions weaker, less flexible, and less beneficial. I want you, my younger brothers and sisters who are listening to me, I want you to develop serious interests. Don't tell me I like comics. Everybody likes comics. Don't tell me I like sports. We all love sports, and don't tell me I like to watch movies and dramas, because we all do. We all have that in common. I like it too. That's not what I'm talking about. Figure out an interest that is serious, that you find intriguing, something that you enjoy. Find it, and then from that interest that you find, you will start to build your experience and your knowledge. You have to find something that you like. Something that is serious, that is real, that has impact on your life and on the lives of other people, so you can start learning. This is not me saying, okay, I live a boring childhood and a boring... No, I'm saying just make sure you have these interests and you spend some time learning. Whatever it may be, whatever the field is, make sure that's there. Help your children do that by opening different doors for them. Don't try to choose their interests for them. That never works. In case you don't know, it never works. It'll never work. Try it, it won't work. Very rarely does it work. Try to help them expand their horizons by learning about things that are of meaning, of actual importance at a young age. A part of that is passing down what it is that you know in life. Try that. If you are, whatever profession you have, whatever it is that you're good at or you do, try to pass down some of that knowledge. And watch how your children become very interested. Because it's something that you do. You're doing it and you're taking them to see what you do. You talk to them about what you do and how you do it, and they become interested. The problem with most fathers, I'm included, is that we don't want to talk about work when we go home. We want to close that circle of hell out so that we can come in, but that's not right. Because basically you're living two lives, and you're depriving your own children from your life, from who you are. Who else are they going to learn from? And who else do you expect your son and daughter to take from if not from you? Of course it's going to be from you. So you have to share with them, you have to show them, you have to talk to them about what you're doing. And you'll be surprised how interested your children will be in that part of your life. Try that out. I remember my dad, and when I was younger, he used to teach me. I don't know how to do it anymore. Like I completely left this away, threw this out of my life. But when I was a kid, he taught me how to do programming because he was an engineer and he did a lot of programming. And the language is called C+. Does it exist anymore? I don't think it exists anymore. But he taught me how to do some programming in C+. And I remember it was so fun. It was the only fun I ever had with my dad because he was teaching me how to do something and talking to me and teaching. And I learned. And I don't remember anything about programming at all. Zero. I have zero information, but I have memories that are much more valuable than that. That stuck with me for the rest of my life. I didn't even go into it. I went into something completely different. But it doesn't matter. When he takes the time to actually do that, it makes a difference. So think about that. All right. And I want to take a bit of time to talk about that because his time, Abdul Muttalib, cannot be underestimated. The time that the Prophet ﷺ, during his childhood, he spent with Abdul Muttalib, he would later talk of. The things he learned, the people he met. Because soon you're going to find the Prophet ﷺ say, go to this person who lives in this area. This is his name, this is what he does. And he's very this or very that. He's very either very just or oppressor. And people are like, well, how do you know him, Ya Rasulullah? You've never been there. You've never been to Al-Habasha, you've never been to Bahrain. You've never been to Yemen, you haven't been there, Ya Rasulullah. When you learned this, he learned it from Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib taught him how the land was run, told him about how things worked, and he learned alayhi early on. He became very, very knowledgeable. And people would always wonder, where did he get all this political knowledge, alayhi? Where did he gain all this political understanding of how things worked? Well, Abdul Muttalib definitely had a big hand in that. So we can move on to the one after. He spends with him 2.5 years. And Abdul Muttalib also passes away when the Prophet ﷺ is around 8 years old. So Abdul Muttalib passed away, and the Prophet ﷺ now, he's lost, it's the third time around being orphaned, alayhi salatu wasalam. So alayhi salatu wasalam would lose his grandfather. Those were three direct losses in his life at the age of 8. So his father passes away, his mother passes away, and now his paternal grandfather passes away. These are three people who are extremely important to him, alayhi salatu wasalam, had he continued, had they lived with him. These are people that he would see on a daily basis. If your parents are still alive and your grandparents, these are people that you are in direct contact with them all the time. So he loses these people very early on, alayhi salatu wasalam. And as I was saying, we sometimes may think, could this affect his compassion, his empathy, alayhi salatu wasalam? Could this make him someone who has no love in his heart? Quite the opposite. You see, when he was living with Abdul Muttalib, the lady of the house who was taking care of him went by the name of Fatima bint Amr. Fatima bint Amr is also a Qurashiyya, and she is the mother of Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib. So the Prophet ﷺ was not only with his grandfather, he was also with his grandmother. And she took good care of him. And she would live later quite long into his life, alayhi salatu wasalam. And when she would finally pass away as a Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ, what he would do is he would go after they dug her grave, and he would lie down in her grave. He would lie down in the grave and he would make dua for her. Like he would go into the grave first, ﷺ, as barakah for her. And he would come out and قال هي أمي ربتني صغيرة. She is like my mother. She took care of me when I was a child. She cared for me when I didn't have any. She was the only person around to take care of me for quite some time. So when you look at his life, ﷺ, despite all these losses, despite all these people being taken away from him at an early age, he never lost his compassion, and he never lost his loyalty. And he was someone who was extremely merciful and took care of others when he grew up. And that's something that we often don't see in modern times. When someone goes through one extreme difficulty or one extreme problem, and that causes them to become very, very upset and very angry at everybody. They're angry at society, they're angry at their parents. But not him, alayhi salatu wasalam. For him, the effect was the opposite. He became very open-hearted. He was very merciful. He would go and he would say in the hadith that you can see up there in Arabic, he would say, أَنَا وَكَافِرُ الْيَتِيمِ كَهَاتَيْنِ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. He would put up his hand and say, you see these two fingers, how close they are? Myself and the person who takes care of an orphan is like this in Jannah. This is how close together they're going to be in Jannah. If you want to be close to the Prophet, you want a nice shortcut, you want something that'll get you there, even though maybe we didn't live the life that he lived or sacrifice he put forward, then take care of an orphan. As an ummah, we have the largest amount of literature and script and text on taking care of orphans, and we do it the least. We have the largest amount of texts that talk about the importance of the yatim, of haqq al-yatim, of taking care of the yatim and making sure the yatim is not feeling that. The Prophet ﷺ was a yatim himself, a double yatim. He was a double orphan, both father and mother, and then his grandfather, so he lost all his loved ones at a very young age. So he made it a point in his life to take care of yatim. He used to take care of orphans before he became a prophet ﷺ. He did that before his prophecy. And then when the Quran was revealed, things became much more clear. But he did that before he became a prophet. I think that's something worth talking about. Whatever difficulty you inherit in this life, whatever misfortunes come your way, and there are many. Everyone goes through difficulties of different nature. We don't all have the same type of misfortunes in life. We have different types. Every person sitting here has a story, has a life story that encompasses pain from different angles. I don't know yours, and you probably don't know mine. And it's impossible for me to ever understand yours, and it's probably impossible for you to understand mine. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have you deal with all this pain? So that you have something in your life that you have this experience you can use to improve the lives of others. The Prophet ﷺ's biggest problem in his life growing up is that he was a yatim. That meant he was deprived of a lot. A lot of things go with being a yatim. Obviously, being an orphan, there's a lot of problems there. I don't need to explain them to you. But he had to go through that ﷺ during his life. It became an issue for him to take care of orphans even before he became a prophet. And then, of course, the literature of the deen, the text of Islam, and the scripture that he recited amongst Muslims, and what he also said in his own hadith, and what he did in his own life, reflected how he took that as a cause for himself, to take care of an orphan. A lot of the time, the difficulties that you go through are there for you to learn a lesson, and then for you to make a change in your life for the better, to help others. Most of the time, that's why these things happen. You can never ever understand fully and clearly why a musibah happens to someone. I don't have an answer for that. This is probably the number one question shuyukh get around the world. This happened to why did this happen to me? No one knows why that happened to you. The question is, after it happened to you, after you went through this difficulty, do you have something to show for it? Are you someone now who has an experience in their lives that they will use to better the lives of others? Or did you take nothing away from this? Because you can either do that, or you can walk away bitter and upset and hateful and disgruntled. Or you can take that difficult experience and then turn it into something useful for someone else. Don't waste time asking the question why when something happens that you don't want it to happen. Rather, spend your time seeing if this experience can be used to help someone else, whatever it may be. Whether you're someone who sinned at some point in their lives, or someone who has some physical disability, or you're someone who has a mental difficulty, or someone who went through a certain experience somewhere here or somewhere else that was very, very hard to talk about and hard to deal with. Well, then raise awareness about that and see if you can help others. That's something you can spend your life doing. And there's a lot of khair in that. And that way, the musibah that happened to you, you're using to help others, or else it was useless. And it's useless because you chose to make it useless. I told you last time, nothing that happens to you is reward or punishment. Nothing comes with a label on it. What happens to you is just something that happened, that Allah subhanahu is a trial. He gave you a trial, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. You label it as a musibah or as a ni'mah. You label it as a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you go ahead and you object and you don't use it for any benefit and you make mistakes, or you label it as a ni'mah, you take it in, you accept it, you say alhamdulillah, and then you move forward in helping other people and bettering their lives. This is what it's all about, really. And you can see that clearly in his life, alayhi salatu wassalam. He was a triple orphan. And this became something that he did all the time. Taking care of people who didn't, not just orphans, taking care of people who didn't have anyone to take care of them. You remember, I'll fast forward just quickly. When he come running, we'll talk about this in a couple of months. He'll come down running down the mountain, alayhi salatu wasalam, right? And he enters to Khadija, he says, Khadija, لَقَدْ خَشِيتُ عَلَى نَفْسِي. I was afraid that this was punishment. That whatever happened to me in that ghar was something bad that was going to happen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is punishing me. فَقَالَتْ لَا وَاللَّهِ لَا يُخْزِيكَ اللَّهُ أَبَدًا. No, definitely not. Allah would never punish you. And then she doesn't say, you prayed and you used to fast. And no, she starts counting things. إِنَّكَ تَحْمِلُ الْكَلِّ وَتُغِيثُ الْمَلْهُوفِ وَتُطْعِمُ الْفَقِيرِ وَتُكْسِبُ الْمَعْدُومِ وَتُعِينُ عَلَى نَوَائِبِ الْحَقِّ. What all these mean is whoever is socially in need, you stand by them. Anyone who's financially in need, you give them money. Anyone who needs someone to help them manage their wealth or manage their lives, you're there to help them manage things. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to punish you. All you do all the time is help those who are weak. Because He was once weak, alayhi salatu wasalam. أَلَمْ يَجِدْكَ يَتِيمًا فَآوَى وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. Did He not find you once? Were you not that way once? Yes, I was, Ya Rab. Well then, what are you doing? What about the ones who were, like you're looking at someone who was you just 10, 15 years ago. You're literally staring at someone who was you just 20 years ago. How would you have wanted people to treat you back then? The way you're treating them right now, if you say no, that is the biggest hypocrisy ever. What you're doing right now is the biggest problem ever. Because you were given a light by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, insight to realize that the way you're treating this person or the way this person is being treated is not the way you would have wanted to be treated when you were in his situation not too long ago. Then why don't you change? Why don't you be better? Or what did you benefit from your difficulty and misfortune? Nothing. And that is the loss. That is loss. You want to talk about loss? That's loss. Going through a difficulty and walking away with nothing. Walking literally with nothing. But the difficulty itself and whatever that took away from you. On the other hand, that difficulty could have added to you as a person on every level if you chose to. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would move, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, 5 different houses in 8 years. I always talk about that for a few moments. 5 different houses in 8 years. The house of his father where he was born. And then he lived with Halima for a bit. Then he came back to the house of his mother for a bit. Then he lived with his grandfather, and now he's going to live with whom he's going to live now. Who's going to take care of him? Yeah, Abu Talib now. His uncle, Abu Talib. Abu Talib is the Prophet ﷺ's direct uncle. He is the son of Abdul Muttalib. He is the most similar person to Abdul Muttalib that lived in Mecca. He was very similar to his father. Had this similar traits. He was very respectful. He was someone who was very wise. The problem with Abu Talib, he was extremely poor financially. He had a lot of children, Abu Talib, and he didn't make enough money to take care of all of them. And that was the only issue that Abu Talib struggled with in his life. The Prophet ﷺ was taken to a home where there were 10 other kids within his age group. So when I tell you later on that the Prophet ﷺ didn't know how to write, or the Prophet ﷺ didn't learn these skills specifically, the question is going to be why? Right? Why is that? Well, when you read and you look at how he grew up, alayhi salatu wasalam, during these years when they would usually go and learn these skills, alayhi salatu wasalam was living in a situation where there was not enough wealth. There just wasn't enough wealth. He saw that at the age of 8. He sat there in the house of his uncle, and food was put, and the amount of food was moderate, and there was too many hands going for the food. He saw that right away, alayhi salatu wasalam. He decided not to sit around and be served. Obviously, he deserves to be served. He's an orphan. He's lost his father, he's lost his mother, he's lost his grandfather, he has no one. It's only basic decency for the people of the house to take care of him and show him a bit more compassion and a bit more empathy. You would think that. But he himself, at the age of 8, this is the level of maturity he had achieved. At the age of 8, he decided to go and work. He decided to go and find a job. And he went and he became a shepherd. Ibn al-Akramin, the son of the greats, would work as a shepherd, would take care of sheep. Once he said that, he talked about, he was speaking to the Sahaba, and he talked about someone being a shepherd. فَضَحِكُوا, so they laughed. Oh, he was a shepherd at one point. Some person. So the Prophet ﷺ قال تضحكون, why are you laughing? مَا بَعَثَ اللَّهُ نَبِيًّا إِلَّا وَرَعَ الْغَنَمِ. All the prophets Allah ever sent were shepherds. At some point in their life, they worked, they took care of animals. فقالوا حتى أنت يا رسول الله. Even you, يا رسول الله. قال حتى أنا كنت أرعى أغناما لآل فلان على قراريط لأهل مكة. I used to take care of a few sheep for this family or that person, and they would give me a couple of pennies at the end of the day for the people of Mecca. I used to take that, and that's how he would buy. He would take care of himself. His masroof, his allowance, he would make himself, alayhi salatu wasalam. Make enough money to feed himself and clothe himself. Not that Abu Talib wouldn't do it, But he just saw, alayhi salatu wasalam, that Abu Talib's situation wasn't good enough for him to sit around and be taken care of, like I did in my life, and you did in yours. At least the majority of people sitting here, under 30. So I don't get the old men upset. Because maybe the older ages, they had a different experience. But if you're under 30, and you had a life similar to, you didn't work at the age of 8. If you did, then I want to hear your story. Please stay after Salat al-Isha and tell me about it. But most people don't work at the age of 8. At that age, they were going to grade 2 or 3 or 4, and their parents took care of them, and they had a place where they could sleep inside a house. And they didn't have to think about where the food came from. They didn't have to worry about having enough clothing. None of that mattered, because at that age, they were fully taken care of by their parents. The Prophet ﷺ was denied that and deprived that basic right. He didn't get that. At age 8, he had to work. To take care of himself, he had to work, ﷺ. It feels like when you look at his childhood, you feel like just one difficulty after another difficulty after another difficulty. I remember I've told this story many times. I remember one person once told me after like a halaqah, I said, should we be doing this to our children because it seems like it worked with the Prophet ﷺ? So no, that's my clear answer. Please have that documented on the record. No, I'm very clearly saying no, don't do that to your children. But what should we do? It's important that our children go through circumstances and experiences where they realize that this is not the case for everybody. They get to see that. Because if they don't get to see that, they don't get to experience that or realize that, then they won't really recognize and enjoy the upper hand that they've been given in this life. They become very entitled to something that you cannot be entitled to. The concept of entitlement is problematic, whether for children or for people my age and older. We're entitled to what? What are we entitled to in this life? Nothing. We're entitled to nothing. We're really entitled to nothing. Entitlement doesn't exist. What we want to have in our lives, the rights that we want, are rights that we have to continue to speak up for and defend for the rest of our existence. That's how they stay rights. Actually, the word right sometimes is misleading. It seems like no one's entitled. We're not really entitled to anything. Read the Quran. There's no entitlement for Muslims at all. There's nothing there. There's entitlement for ummah. For the ummah of Muslimin. If they follow certain rules, there are certain promises of prosperity. But for the individual, there's no entitlement. There's nothing. You're not awarded anything by being a Muslim, and nothing's going to definitely come your way. Learning that at my age is important, and making sure that our children know that is also important. That what you have right now is a ni'mah. It's called a ni'mah. It's a blessing, something extra you were given. Use it wisely. Use it to the best of your ability. You could have easily been somewhere else, dealing with a different situation, easily. And I think, I know that we all struggle, those of us who have children, struggle, how do I get my children to appreciate the ni'mah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given? Well, more time needs to be spent, and more experiences need to be had. And they have to see more and experience more, and just they have to be a part of life a bit more. We sometimes overprotect and isolate to the point where they don't know anything anymore. They're not a part of life. They have no idea what's happening, and that's not a good thing. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help them, because life is different than whatever it is we've isolated them from. When you think about the Prophet ﷺ taking care of animals, you wonder for a moment, especially taking care of sheep. What did he learn from it? Because everything that we're going to talk about, as you're going to see very soon, everything I talk about during his early life, ﷺ, is nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preparing him for his prophecy. Is preparing him to become the messenger. He goes through all these different situations. Every situation he learns something vital, something crucial, that will allow him to be the person he will later be as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I don't need people to go through the exact same experiences, but I need them to pick up the same skills. That's what I'm trying to say. We don't want our children to be orphans. We don't want them to work at the age of 8. We don't want them to be in a situation where they can't afford to go to school, but we want them to pick up some skills. There are certain skills here that need to be obtained, or else we're producing generations that are not capable of actually making a difference. And I think that's a big part of what we struggle with. You can go forward, inshallah. All right. He became extremely self-dependent, alayhi salatu wassalam. That's something that he picked up. When he lived with Abu Talib, he had to become a bit self-dependent. He had to work. There's an ayah up there that we're going to talk about at some point in the future, but I want to bring it up right now, just so that you, in case this is ringing a bell or or you have some questions in your mind. When you hear about the Prophet ﷺ's childhood, almost for a moment you think, this is a horrible childhood. This is very, very bad. This is very difficult. How did you survive this? How does anyone survive that type of life? All these difficulties and all these problems. The ayah in the Quran says, "Inna ma'al usri yusra." I'm not going to talk about the first one because that one will be a part of the surah that I'll explain inshallah in a couple of months when we come to it. But the second ayah, "Inna ma'al usri yusra," this is a law. This is a Quranic law. "Inna ma'al usri yusra." How do we usually understand it? This is whenever I ask a question. I did a khutbah once. I can't remember where. And I asked, how do you understand that? Translate it for me. So this is what I got. Indeed, after difficulty there will be ease. Correct? Do you agree with that? Huh? See, no one wants to agree with that because they know I'm going to say it's wrong. That's okay. See, very, very smart. Because it doesn't say inna ba'da al-usri yusra. No, that's in a different ayah with a different context. This is saying here, inna ma'al usri yusra. Indeed, with difficulty, within difficulty, there will be ease. And that's a different concept altogether. You're not supposed to spend your time worrying about what's going to come, about the unknown, about something that you're not sure if you can deal with. Don't spend your time worrying. Why? Because if you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala properly, and you're a Muslim who actually believes in the hereafter and is doing your job, then know this, with each difficulty, there'll be enough ease to get through it. With each difficulty you are handed, no matter what difficulty it is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make sure within it, there's enough ease to get through it. Some difficulties don't have ease after them. Some difficulties end with death. Some difficulties continue all lifelong. If I promise you that every difficulty will have ease after it, I'm lying to you. And I don't want to lie to you, because the Quran didn't lie to me or to you. But with each difficulty, there'll be enough ease for you to get through it, inshallah. If you can look for it, if you can see it, if you can pick it up. You have to pull it out yourself. Meaning he'll give you the difficulty and in it is ease. You will choose whether to take that ease and use it to get through this and learn, or to completely crumble. That's going to be your choice, unfortunately. But it's there. The amount of ease that is needed for you to survive this is right there in the middle of that difficulty. Even if this ends with your own death, even if this is the end of it, doesn't matter. There'll be enough ease for you to get through. For you to hold on to who you are. And hold on to your belief system and to hold on to your integrity. But that's going to be a choice you're going to have to make. Inna ma'al usri yusra. Very important Quranic concept. We'll talk about it a bit more once we come to when the verse was actually revealed to him, alayhi salatu wasalam. But don't waste time feeling sorry for him, alayhi salatu wasalam, as a child. No. But if you do see someone in difficulty, make sure you do your best to relieve it. And know for yourself, don't worry too much. With each difficulty, there will be enough ease for you to get through it, inshallah. So he works as a shepherd, alayhi salatu wasalam, for 7 years. Working with animals, working with sheep, you learn certain things. You learn how to gather those who like to scatter. Alayhi salatu wasalam will become the master of this art. He will bring people together, he will unite nations, he will unite tribes and unite families, and bring together a peninsula that had been fighting amongst itself for a very, very long time. And he will do things that people will later on speak of for many, many, many centuries. For centuries after he died, people would say, he actually took Qurashi people and had them live in the houses of Ausi and Khazraji people. You're telling me that these people lived in the same houses? And they shared rooms and they shared food? Impossible. That's impossible. And they would have to meet someone from Quraysh and ask, did you actually have a brother from Khazraj where you lived in their house? And he would say, yes, he is my mu'akhi fil Islam, he's my brother in Islam, I lived in his house. Impossible. How could he do that? How could you? The genealogy is so spread out. They're not related in any way. Quraysh and Khazraj and Aus, they're not related at all. They're very, very far away from each other. Very different backgrounds, very different cultures. There's a lot of animosity. But alayhi salatu wasalam would unite people. He would learn to gather those who scatter. Maybe spending years. You can't be cruel to an animal. You can't, because they don't know any better. So you had to learn a certain level of rahmah, of compassion and empathy and mercy. that would make his heart a very large one. He had a big heart. He was very, very patient. It would take time. Because working with it, and it's something I think is worth teaching children, how to take care of an animal. Have a pet. Doesn't have to necessarily be a dog. But we can figure out something else that works. Because children will struggle with that. How do I take care of it? Animals don't listen. They don't follow rules. They won't do what you said. Right? Do you have enough to learn compassion, to learn empathy, to learn patience? Alayhi Salatu learned these things dealing with animals for 7-8 years. I'm sure that this made him someone much wiser, much more patient, understanding of how life works in general. By dealing with those who share this earth with us, the animals who share this land with us, having empathy toward them. But if you go through his life, animals were a big part. He had a donkey by the name of Ya'fur. He had a mule, Baghl, by the name of Duldul. Yes, that's what he called the Baghl. That's actually the name. I didn't make that up, that's actually what he called his Baghl. Alayhi Salatu Wasalam he named every single camel he owned. Every camel, Al-Qaswa, he named them all. They all had names. And if one of them passed away, or died, or got killed, he would be very upset, alayhi salatu wasalam. You could see how upset he got in his face, alayhi salatu wasalam. He would speak to animals. He would go up and stand beside an animal, and sometimes he would take the opportunity, if he saw the owner of the animal mistreating the animal, he would go up to the person and would say this, the camel just told me that you've been working it day and night, even though it was very old, and it took care of you when it was younger, and now you're showing it no respect as aged. And the man will say, the camel told you that, Ya Rasulullah. He said, yes, that's what the camel told me. But he observed something, alayhi salatu. He observed, maybe like Sulaiman, the camels talked to him. I don't know, doesn't matter. The point is clear. Once alayhi salatu saw a bird chirping very loudly and basically flying between two trees. So he came and قال من أفجع هذه بأولادها. Who's the one who took this bird's children away? So one of the Sahaba standing there with 2 eggs in his hand. قال يا رسول الله, I'm going to make an omelet or whatever he's going to use it for. فقال ردها إليها. Give it back. So the man, he's amazed. He's like, okay. So he goes up to the tree. He's looking down to see if the Prophet, maybe he's joking with him, but he wasn't. He was upset. He was standing there. Put it back in. So he puts the eggs back into the nest, and he comes down again, and he walks away. He doesn't understand. We're going to have like veiled mitli or something. We're going to have something nice to eat. And the Prophet was like, no, you don't. She's been nurturing life in that for how long? How do you do it like that? He sees a man taking a sheep for slaughter. I'm not saying that I become a vegan today. Eat meat, but he's taking a sheep for slaughter, and this guy was just pulling this sheep just from a leg, and the sheep was falling over. فقال يا هذا سقها إلى الموت سوقا جميلا. Can you please take it to its death in a respectable way? أتريد أن تقتلها مرتين? You want to kill it twice? You want to kill it twice? You're gonna slaughter it for your own benefit in a few minutes. You can't do that respectfully. You're pulling it like a garbage bag. So the man he's smartened up, and I think that's something worth learning. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he took care of animals for 7 years. He gained a respect for these creations that allowed him later on to actually practice it and become a part of our own deen. After that, he would work as a merchant for 15 years. Abu Talib would notice how intelligent and mature the Prophet ﷺ was. And once he was old enough, ﷺ, to do something different, he included him in his business. Abu Talib, as most people from Quraysh, was a merchant. He would sell and buy. Rahad al-Shita was sayf that his grandfather had started. Hashim ibn Abd al-Manaf had started that known trip to Sham and then trip to Yemen based on the seasons. So Abu Talib was a part of this, and he would take his wealth and he'd go sell it and buy, and that's how he'd make his money. Abu Talib just wasn't a very wealthy person, a lot of children, and he was a very generous man, as most of the family of the Prophet ﷺ were, and he would give a lot of his wealth away, so he didn't have much wealth. But he included the Prophet ﷺ with him. He would take him with him on all these journeys and teach him how to buy and how to sell. So for the next 15 years, so from age basically 15 or 14 to the age of 30-ish, he would work as a businessman or as a merchant, ﷺ. He would buy and he would sell. And of course, we're going to talk about that a bit more in just a little bit. During these years, two things would happen. Two very important events would take place in Arabia that the Prophet ﷺ would also learn from. I'm just giving you all the experiences. I'm giving you the main experiences that he went through alayhi salatu wasalam during his life, and then we're going to break down all the benefits that he took from them. I've talked about a bunch of them so far, but so we can also think of something that we can do for our own selves. Something would happen called harb al-fujar. Harb al-fujar. The word fujar or fajara comes from doing something that is a horrible sin or a capital sin. Al-fujur is going against certain the basic ethics, the basic laws of the land. Al-fujur. So harb al-fujar was basically the war of sins. What happened was Thaqif, one of the tribes of Ta'if, tried to perform a coup in Mecca. They tried to overthrow Quraysh and regain or take over the ruling of Mecca. You see, they did exist in Mecca, and they kind of half ruled it for a while, but then Qusay ibn Kilab, when he came and he united Quraysh, and they were kicked out. So they didn't have any claim over Mecca. So they tried to perform a coup during the Prophet ﷺ's teen years. He was around 17 or 18. So the Prophet, and it happened during the Ashhur al-Hurum, during the sacred months. That's why it was called the War of Sins, because you're not allowed to start a war during those months. And of course you're fighting in Mecca, which is also a sin within the law of the land, or the Abrahamic laws that were left, that the people knew. That was one of them. So this was a problem. Thaqif came with their army and tried to overthrow Mecca. All of Quraysh would gather their warriors to defend Mecca and defend their tribe. Amongst the people who would defend was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was only 17. He learned how to use the sword and the bow and arrow. He learned what war is about. He understood war. He understood a lot of things about war. Not just how war is done, the art of actually winning a battle and conquering something and beating your enemy, your opponent. But he also learned the horrors of war. And the harm of war. And he learned how war leaves everyone in loss. That war is something you only turn to when you have no other options to fix the problem. That's why as we go through his seerah, it'll become very clear to you, as it is to me, how he will always prioritize peace. He will always try and find a way to negotiate things. How he will not turn to violence in war unless he absolutely has to, and in specific situations where you need to, and you're expected to stand your ground. Learning that, being a part of that, participating in a war at the age of 17, 18, that went on for something around a bit less than a year, but it wasn't something short, it happened for quite some time. Participating in that and seeing it, and seeing what difficulties this caused, and how he learned a lot, alayhi salatu wasalam. And when he was given the opportunity, as you will see, when he's given the opportunity to end war, he will sign the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. He'll take all the losses, all the status losses, all the financial losses, all the social losses, just to get peace and freedom, obviously, to speak his mind. But he'll always prioritize less bloodshed. That's why you go through the wars, all the wars that he was a part of, all the ghazawat that he participated in, alayhi salatu wasalam, the number of people who died are less than 1,000. Altogether, less than 1,000 people, everything he did, alayhi salatu wasalam, which is a very small number if you compare it to other experiences and stories, and you compare it to the number of ghazawat that he actually had to fight, alayhi salatu wasalam, during his life. Another thing that would happen during his life that is extremely important, he was around in his early 20s at that point, was something called Hilf al-Fudul. It's a treaty that was signed by the leaders of Quraysh. All the leaders of Quraysh had noticed that the amount of people who were poor living in Mecca had increased, and a lot of the families were struggling. They wanted to sign a treaty that would force every family to take care of the poor counterparts, of their poor counterparts. Whoever lived in an area, and there were people who didn't have enough money to feed themselves or clothe themselves, it became a wajib, it became mandatory upon the tribe, the large tribe beside them, to clothe them and feed them. And this is called Hilf al-Fudul. And the Prophet ﷺ participated in this, and he signed it with them. And he would later on talk about this years to come. That he signed this in the house of Abdullah ibn Jad'an, and that if he was ever asked to sign something like that again with any group in the world, he would sign it. Any treaty that will end war, any treaty that will start peace, any treaty that will bring families together and help those who are less fortunate is something he was interested in being a part. He participated, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the signing of that treaty. He got to see how treaties are signed, how agreements are achieved. He got to see when you take care of the less fortunate, how everything gets better. These are all experiences he's going through, alayhi salatu wasalam, at quite a young age. Now, I have a question at the end there that I put. All these experiences that he went through, did he go through these experiences through miracles? Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach him all this wisdom through a miracle? Or was it life? Or is it just the experience of life that he gained, that he went through, alayhi salatu wasalam, that allowed him to become the person he later on became? He didn't wake up, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at the age of 40 with all the wisdom and experience that he had out of nowhere. No. He became a prophet at the age of 40, and he lived 40 years before that. And he went through many difficulties, and he had a lot of experiences, and he gained enough wisdom and knowledge and skills that allowed him later on to be the person that we're going to talk about, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I look at it as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preparing him, putting him through throwing him into the school of life and preparing him for what was to come. Move forward. I have a few more points to make before we. Yes. I'm going to talk about this a little bit. Gaining skills. Gaining skills. So, the first question is, so what skills did he gain, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, during his life? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we go up till now, because of course there's a few more experiences that he's going to go through. Still, we're not done. But up till now, he's around 30 years old. What skills has he gained so far, alayhi salatu wasalam? If you think about it, he's learned how to deal with people. Where did he learn that from? If you're a merchant for 15 years, do you not know how to read people at the end? Businessmen, people who buy and sell, they learn how to read people. They learn how to speak to people and how people speak to them. Because that's all they do all day long. All they do all day long is speak to people and try to bargain and come up with a deal that works for everyone. If you're rude, no one will come and buy anything from you. And if you're naive, you won't make enough money, so you can't work anymore. In order to be a good businessman, you have to know how to speak to people. You have to know how to read people when they first speak to you. Is this someone who is honest? Is this someone who will pay? Is this someone who is poor? Is this someone who is rich? What do they want? What are they looking for? Being a merchant, working in business, selling and buying, alayhi salatu wasalam picked up a very important skill, reading people. And of course you'll see, there's a lot of different type of merchants, obviously, in the world. A lot of different type of businessmen. Alayhi salatu wasalam was from that very small, unfortunately, percentage of people, extremely honest, never lied once. I never took mal haram, not even the smallest amount. You would never say anything that was untrue about anything he was selling, alayhi salatu wasalam. Would not make a promise you couldn't come through with, not once. Now, not once means that he's even probably not in a small percentage. He's probably the only person that ever lived to do that. It's very difficult to do. If you've ever worked in this field, you know what I'm talking about. We're Syrians. All we do is tijara. We're tujara, and believe me, this is very hard for someone to hold on to that integrity throughout his life. The Prophet ﷺ, working as a merchant, he learns a lot. Traveling as a businessman, going back and forth, he learns the land. He learns the different people's tongues. He learns their accents. He learns their cultures. He learns their backgrounds, because he has to interact with them almost all the time. He goes from Yemen to Damascus, and then to the eastern part of Arabia. So he covers most of the land. So all the things he learned from Abdul Muttalib when he was young, he gets to see with his own eyes. He gets to actually experience all this. He sits with the higher ranked businessmen talking about wealth and talking about the movement of money. So he understands how money works. Money is a big problem for my generation. I don't know if you're 30 and if you're like me, you probably have no idea how to deal with money. I think my generation is the worst generation ever regarding managing wealth. I have zero experience in this. This is something I did not learn, and I don't know how to manage at all. And if it wasn't for my wife, I'd probably be he wouldn't be here right now. We're not taught that very well. I don't know if the next generation is getting better, but my generation, because our fathers, they come from a really difficult and rough background. Most of them are immigrants, and they worked, so they took care of a lot of stuff for us. They didn't want to get us involved in money at a young age. Then I grow up and I don't know how to do anything. It's a problem. The Prophet ﷺ, he had to take care of money early on, understand what money's worth actually is, how to use it, when to use it, what to buy with it. He had to do that early on, alayhi salatu wasalam. Social skills, right? We talked about social skills. He has to know how to speak to people, how to read people. He has to know how to manage money. He travels, so he learns the political, socio-political landscape of the region. He works with animals, alayhi salatu wasalam. He has to become someone who's very patient, someone who is very compassionate, someone who has a lot of empathy, someone who knows how to gather. Because that's what you do when you're a shepherd. You have to gather, keep your group of animals in one place, basically. He learns the meaning of death and life. He loses his father, he loses his mother, he loses his grandfather. He learns that death is a part of our existence, whether you like it or not, whether it's uplifting for you or depressing, I don't know what it is, but it's a part of life, and it's coming. At some point, your cards will run out, and there'll be nothing left, and you'll take that last breath, and you'll move on to something different, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has explained to you in detail. He's explained to you exactly what to expect once that ends, and what He wants from you to do now so that you have the ending that you want. So you're not left in the blue, you're not left in the dark. You're not sitting around wondering, oh, what's gonna, no. If you want to know exactly, He's explained it to you, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is filled with it, of exactly what to expect after you pass away, and what you need to do to ensure you like that outcome. So he learned the lesson of life and death. He learned to be self-dependent. He learned to integrate. He had to be very flexible in order for him to actually be able to survive. In 5 houses during 8 years, he had to be a very flexible person. Being moved from one person to the other, from one caregiver to the other. Living in a house with 10 other children, where people don't really focus the attention on him. You have to learn to find motivation from the inside. To internally motivate yourself. That's a big problem. I know, I see that all the time. It's a big problem with youth. How do you get them to be eternally motivated? How do you get someone to do something if I'm not staring at them? Whether you're looking at them and they're happy that you're looking at them, or you're looking at them because you're extremely upset. But either way, someone's looking in order for this person to do something. That's a problem. This internal motivation is lost. Alayhi salatu wasalam, he had to deal with this. He wasn't getting. If you think about it, he never completely lost the loving touch. He went from Halima to his mother, to the grandmother and grandfather, and then to Abu Talib, and his wife was someone who was related. His wife Hala was related to Amina bint Wahab. So there was a relationship there. So he always has someone there who was merciful towards him and loving. But obviously he was amongst 10 other children, so he wasn't the center of attention, alayhi salatu wasalam. He had to learn to do things because he thought they were the right thing, and because he wanted to do them, alayhi salatu wasalam, and find his internal motivation. It's a key word there, internally motivated. Those who have children who are internally motivated do not understand the suffering of the rest of us. They don't. They walk around, they have more sleep, they're much happier, they're lay back and relaxed, and because having an internally motivated child makes life much easier, because you don't have to tell them. Actually, I get very jealous. Sometimes I'm envious of someone who has that, and they don't know what they have. You have someone who actually do this on their own. So how do you get that? I don't have a good answer for you, but that should be a question we should be asking all the time. How do we get our youth to become internally motivated, to want to do things, to actually find joy in learning and researching and gaining skills and doing something good? How do we get that done? I don't have a perfect answer for you, but it has to be something you are very much interested in obtaining. We need to talk more about this as parents. We need to find recipes, specifically at the time we live. We are living in times where it's so easy to lose motivation, specifically for young boys. I'm not a female, so I can't really speak for my sisters. I'll leave that for you guys to talk about. But for young boys, nowadays, well, it's hard to get them motivated. Too much is available. Too much out there that is captivating to the male mind is available right there, that requires from them nothing to obtain and to achieve. And that takes away from the internal motivation. We have to talk about human biology, human psychology, human sexual psychology to actually come up with answers of why is it that our youth aren't that motivated. Well, it's not that hard to figure out if you just look around of what's there. And raising the bar for your child, I'll give you one thought. Raising the bar for your children is one way of doing it. Any parent who raises the bar for their children, is doing a good job, because your children will want to do more. The only problem is if you raise it too high, unrealistically high, higher than what the Prophet ﷺ did himself, then that's not going to work, obviously. If you raise it too high, then you will do the opposite effect. The child will figure out that this is impossible. There is nothing I can do that will ever be good enough for you, so he gives up completely, or she does. So it's a matter of raising the bar to a point where you motivate this child to be better, but not to the point where they lose hope. How you do that, again, I don't know. But that's what we need to do, and that's how you actually get things done. Raising it in a moderate way where it actually works, where children feel that they actually want to achieve more. How did these skills that we talked about, we'll talk about them more inshallah in the next halaqah as well when we finish. Next halaqah we'll probably finish talking about his preparations. How did they benefit him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It's not hard to see. It's not hard to see how having social skills helped him become a prophet, being a better prophet, or a better messenger, a better da'iyah, or someone to speak in the name of Islam. It's not hard to see how managing money and knowing how to deal with large groups of people or even sheep, or even any form of creation helped him become a better prophet. It's not hard to see how mercy and compassion and a proper understanding of life and death would help him become the best person he would be later on, alayhi salatu wasalam. Obviously, these things enhanced who he was going to be, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So, the question that I'm left with, and you're left with. As a youth, what skills do you have, and what skills do you need in life? I'm not talking about information. I'm not talking about information. Information is something different than skills. Attaining skills is different than learning information. Knowing things is different. I talked about that, and that's very important, and the Quran will come and talk about that. I'm talking about skills now. What skills do you have? I put a bunch of them up there. Just examples. Not saying these are the only skills, not even saying they're most important skills. But I think there are skills that need to be acknowledged. My younger brothers and sisters that I deal with, and the youth that I talk to, you can't help but notice that there's a lot missing. And it's not their fault. You can't obtain a skill by yourself. You need someone to teach you. You need someone to train you. You need someone to put you in a situation where you have to obtain that skill. I've shared this story before. I'll tell you about myself. I remember I had a friend with, his name was Ramad. He was my age. And we were the smartest two kids in grade school. I remember with only two male kids who ever got out and were given a gift. Everyone else were girls. I remember he was very good at school, but he had to leave when he was grade 9. After grade 9, he had to leave school because he had to go work for 3 years. He came back later and continued his education. But when he was grade 9, he had to go. He did grade 9, then he had to leave for like 3 years to work. And he and I were very close. I remember by the time I was grade 12, and he was, he wasn't grade 12. He was working. I remember that whenever I sat with him, I felt so small. I felt so little. He was actually bigger than me physically, but not because of that. Because he had way more experience in life itself. He knew how to do things. He knew how to get things done. He knew how to speak to people. He knew how to buy and sell stuff. He knew how to present himself in a public situation. And I don't think you should take your kids out of school. I don't think that's the answer to any of our problems. But I'm just trying to point something out here. Skills are important. We don't focus on skills anymore. We talk a lot about information and how they write their homework, but we fail to talk about skills. I gave a couple of examples. Public speaking, for example. Time management. When I talk to my younger brothers and sisters, their number one problem is procrastination. They don't know how to sit down and manage their time. They have 24 hours during the day, and they don't know how to manage it. And most of the time is wasted. And I know that if you manage your time, you can be anything you want to be. This is a skill, lillahi alhamd, I was taught, I was trained by my teachers at a young age to learn to do and to perfect. I was forced, or else I wouldn't have done anything. I wouldn't have achieved anything in life at all had they not forced me to learn this skill, to manage my time, so I would spend enough time doing everything, making sure I give enough time for school, enough time for Quran, enough time for my Islamic education, enough time to play and to enjoy my time with my friends, enough time to read literature and to build my own interests. There's enough time in the day. But if you don't know how to manage it, then it seems like there's no time. But there is. There's enough. You have enough time to get all that done. If you want to be someone who is, if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer or an inventor, and you also want to know the Quran and learn Islam, and you also want to play soccer and have fun, there's enough time. I am telling you, there's more than enough time to do all that stuff, if you know how to manage it. If you don't know how to manage it, then, what can I do? This is a skill. Don't expect your kids to know how to manage their time if you never taught them to. If you're not teaching them to manage their time, if you don't schedule things for them a bit and teach them how to schedule for themselves and hold themselves to deadlines, then they're not going to know how to do it. You're going to think, well, you should do it. What's wrong with you? Spend this. No, there's nothing wrong with them. You're just 40 or 50 and you've learned through the bumps of life how to do it. They don't know how to do it yet. You want them to achieve some success at an early age. Help them with time management. And you'll see how they'll get ahead much quicker. Working in a team, for example. Self-presentation, social relationships. These are all skills that children should learn. How to exist amongst a group. These are skills that are sometimes very scary for children. You put a couple of youth in a group. I do this every once in a while, and then ask them to present themselves and watch colors change and people run away. And why? What's wrong? I'm asking you to present yourself. That's yourself. That's the person you know the most in the world. Just say who you are and what you're here. Why? Because there's something missing. If you can't walk in, I remember my father would force me every time he had guests to walk into the room and give salams to all of them and present myself to them. Right? The first time you hate it, the second time you hate it, the third time you hate it, and then after that you're used to it. It's fine. No problem. You feel confident, you can speak, you can talk to people who are older than you. But if you don't let your kids in the room when there are guests over, you don't want them to be interacting, then they never learn to do that. And you wonder later on, why do you lack confidence? Why can't you speak openly? Why can't you express yourself? Learning to write, express yourself in a written form. Having the penmanship is a skill, again. But they teach you a bit of this at school, but it's not enough. This is something you actually have to teach children to do, to learn how to write. Research, how to look something up. That's a skill. How to actually go and find the sources of information that are reliable. And actually how to interpret information when you're reading it. These are skills. Again, information is there, but if you don't know how to access it properly and actually benefit from it, we have deprived our generations from skills. And there's a lot of reasons. Maybe it's not important. The reasons are, but it's not hard to actually change. It just takes some extra effort from parents. Fathers specifically. Yeah, and you have to take the lead on this one. When it comes to making sure your children have skills, you have to take the lead on that. You have to go ahead and you have to put in your effort to make sure that your child actually obtains skills that they're going to need in their lives. So my younger brothers and sisters who are listening to me right now, I want you to think about this. What skills do you wish you had? What skills do you think you're going to need in your life? What skills do you feel that you're scared of actually talking about? Start thinking about this stuff and ask, and you will get inshallah. And I believe Islamic institutions like the one we're in right now should focus a lot of its efforts on helping youth obtain skills, gain skills. Yes, we should teach Islam and talk about, but how do you actually implement Islam if you're teaching it to a group of people who don't have skills? I don't think that's going to do anything. Actually, salah is a skill. Or else why do you have to do it so many times? And why do you have a month a year where you're asked to practice this 600 rak'ah a month? This is obviously a skill that you're being taught. Here, do this time and time again until you learn how to do it. You want your kid to learn how to pray, go beyond telling them to pray. Teach them how to stand there and do it. Include them. You're like, well, I don't know how to do it. Well, then that's the problem. That's the problem. If we don't even know how to do this properly, if we don't have this skill ourselves, how do we expect our children to have this skill? It's not going to work. It doesn't make any sense. But a lot of what you learn in Islam, a lot of what Islam is skills. It's more than just information. They can memorize a lot of information in their heads. I know people who memorize the Quran from the beginning to the end, but there are no skills with it. They don't know how to practice it. Isn't that what practice is? A skill to actually implement something? And that's exactly what we're supposed to be as Muslims. We're supposed to be given the information and then the ability to implement, which is a skill. Skill needs personal touch. It needs time spent with individuals. You have to take personal interest in people, in individuals. These halaqat maybe, they're nice. Some people come to them, talk a little, tell stories. It's all nice. But this doesn't build skills. What I'm doing right now doesn't build a skill at all. Because there's no personal touch here. I find myself much more happier when I'm speaking to one person and I'm helping one person through their one problem. And I do it once or twice and then they learn how to do it and now they know how to, they have a skill now. You actually provided someone with a service that they can continue the rest of their lives benefiting from. And that's something we can all participate in, because regardless of what background you have in terms of your education or your profession, we all, as people over 30 years old, have certain skills that our younger brothers and sisters don't have. And the skills that I put up right there, most of them are there. You know how to manage your time, you know how to manage your money, you know how to present yourself, you have good social relationships, you know how to speak to people. A lot of kids don't, a lot of youth don't. Well, then offer that, provide that. If you can provide that for others, then that's of true benefit. It's of true benefit. Because that's how you help them get ahead and achieve something. Okay, within the next 2 minutes, I'll just give a quick spoiler for next time. So alayhi salatu wasalam right now is 31. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I've talked about a lot of the experiences that he went through his life so far. There's a few more things that need to happen before he becomes a prophet. There's 10 more years, right? So there's a couple more things. But next time, I get to talk about something that's very important. We're going to talk about his marriage, alayhi salatu wasalam. So if you don't like hearing about marriage, don't come next week, because I'm going to go marriage a bit. We'll talk about his marriage, alayhi salatu wasalam. Talk about the person he got married to, alayhi salatu wasalam. Talk a little bit about Khadija bint Khuwaylid, who she was and the importance of this individual in the Seerah, and the importance of his story as a husband, alayhi salatu wasalam. Extremely important. And just as important, the story of Khadija as a wife. Because if we're suffering right now, if there's anything we can talk about social suffering, this is the domain I choose as my number one problem that I see in Muslim communities. This issue is getting worse by the day. It's not something that we see the effect by year, it's by day that that this becomes more and more of a problem. Where our youth are getting married later and later, people are increasingly less happy within their marriages. We're not holding on to it. We're not functioning as units, as families, the way we're supposed to function. When I talk about all the problems about bringing children, it's not because parents don't want to take care of their children, it's because there's too many problems within the house to actually have enough emotional availability to take care of children properly. Marriage is something that you need to be psychologically, religiously, financially, and socially prepared for. This is something that you need to be people have to help you prepare for it. It's a social effort. One or two people won't make the difference. As a society, we have to change the way we view marriage and deal with it. And this is a problem that we need to fix here in the West way more than we need to fix anywhere else in the world. And if you don't agree with me, or you think this is something not important, it's because you're out of touch. That's all. You don't spend enough time with high schoolers and university students. If you did, or if you went to any of these high schools, or if you went to university and walked around, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Listen to youth when they talk about certain things. They always bring this up. Whenever I sit with a group of youth and I go ahead and ask questions, number one question. This is the joke question. This is not the joke question, but those who know me will ask it just to irritate me, because I get this question every single time. Is dating halal? That's the number one question I get. Even though they know the answer, they'll ask it anyway because I can go on a rant and it's fun. And another reason is because they actually, on a subconscious level, they have a problem. They don't know how to voice it. And they need someone to address it. And they need a community to change the way they deal with it. Or else we're looking down a very, very grim future if we don't. So if you don't want to hear any of that next time, then come to halaqah after. But next time we're going to talk about the Prophet ﷺ's marriage, inshallah. And we'll talk about the final preparations before his prophecy, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. See you next week, inshallah.